It's dark down here.
Now playing Switch by SOHMI.
Thank you so much for joining us to episode number 19 of Deep Dark Tunnel Diaries. My name is Mama Tramel, and you are SOHMI. You're a producer, songwriter, and DJ.
Correct, yeah.
That's awesome. I see that you are you currently in Denver right now, or you just came back from Arizona?
I know, I'm like, where am I? I'm like, I'm in Chicago. Wait, no, I'm in Denver. Yeah, so I am in Denver. I just landed, what time is it? Oh my gosh. Okay, I landed like an hour and a half ago, and just got to the hotel, and I'll be here until Saturday, at which point I then fly to Chicago and then Arizona.
Nice. It must be really hot out there. Are you like excited to come to like the barren like wasteland winter of like Chicago?
You know, so I'm kind of down. Like I checked the weather forecast and it's actually not going to be like as bad as I thought for Chicago. You know, like I don't know what I was expecting, but I was expecting like Arctic tundra status. But
yeah. Well,
it seems like it's going to be not that bad.
Our house community welcomes you. I know Chicago's really great in that regard. With that being said, have you played Chicago before?
I actually have played one time, yeah. So last year, I want to say it was September, I played in Chicago for the first time with Dirty Disco, who has a night at Spy Bar. So I got to play at the legendary Spy Bar, and wow, you walk in and you can just feel the like house music history in there.
Yeah. I saw that you're also going to Electric Forest. I'm from Michigan originally, from
okay.
Detroit, sort of. So like to me that is like such a huge deal. It's so esoteric. Are you excited for your set?
I'm very excited. I've actually never been to the state of Michigan, like, ever in my life.
Really?
I know, crazy. Yeah, like, I was going to say I've never been to Detroit, but I've never even been to Michigan, and I've never done Electric Forest. So lots of firsts with that one, so I'm super excited. Have you been to Electric Forest?
No. One can dream. I've seen, like, YouTube videos of it, but, like, obviously it's a different experience when you, like, go in person.
Yeah. I've heard wild things. You know, everyone always talks about how beautiful, like, all the lights are out there specifically. I guess they do a lot with, like, the forest itself and, like, hanging up a million, like, lights all over the trees so that, you know, at night it just lights up and looks incredible. So I'm excited to, like, get out there and wander around and just, like, look at all that stuff.
That should be really magical. What do you value most about the dynamic of, like, a set at a festival opposed to like a set at a like club?
Oh, that's such a good question. Well, you know, I mean, I think that like each has like, I don't want to say pros and cons. Like there aren't really, I guess, cons per se. But I'll say what I like, I guess, more about each one. You know, like with a club set, I feel like because of the space you're in, which is enclosed, usually dark, and yeah, I mean, there's lasers and cool stuff, but you know, primarily the atmosphere is kind of dark and sexy. Like it just allows for you to kind of like take the audience like on like a darker journey. Sometimes I feel like even if it's not that you couldn't play the same kind of set at a festival, like you know, you could, but I don't know that it would translate the same way. You know, like I don't think the storytelling would come across quite the same way as when you experience it at the club. And then, you know, on the flip side, at a festival, I feel like, you know, that's an opportunity to kind of play maybe like, I want to say maybe like more euphoric music, something about, especially if you're playing like a daytime, you know, set, and it's so open. Usually, like, you know, these festivals are outdoors. Like, I feel like these bigger tracks that might maybe sound a little cornier, like in a club. They really shine, like when you're on a big stage outdoors and everyone's just vibing, like, you know, sun shining on their faces. So both are great in their own ways.
I like that word that you use, storytelling. Could you elaborate on what exactly that means to your artistry, like when you're performing?
Sure. So, you know, I'm sure that most DJs will say that, you know, the storytelling component of how they put together a set or how they decide, you know, what to play is a factor, you know, in what they do. But like, it's something that I really think about. And it's hard to pinpoint, I guess, what that means for me, but I can try and explain kind of how I approach it. So my background is in classical music, actually. I studied classical piano for 17 years, and all throughout school, I, you know, sort of took music classes and did theory and all that, and I was never very good at the theory part. I hated being told, you know, that I wasn't allowed to use certain notes in certain combinations, or that, you know, oh, back in the day this would have been like, you know, not allowed to use these kinds of chords together like that. That drove me crazy, because I'd just be like, well, they sound good to me, you know. But you know, something I did take away from all that was kind of like a lot of exposure to orchestral music and sort of very grandiose, long form, like compositions that are also divided into like sections, you know, movements. And each movement kind of has its own vibe, like, you know, not to get too nerdy with it, but like, you know, usually there'll be like a first movement that starts like in a major key. It kind of has like a happier vibe. And then maybe by the second movement, it moves into like more of a minor key, which, you know, tends to carry with it like a sadder, more melancholy vibe. And so I feel like that's kind of how I approach, you know, my DJ sets. Is I think about them in terms of movements, and I feel like I feel like you can kind of pinpoint like all my DJ sets into like three distinct parts, if that makes sense. It's almost like I'm constantly subconsciously like thinking about them in like orchestral movements.
That's fascinating that you're able to do that, and I could see how that does like allude to sort of like storytelling.
It's like, oh, there's like the happier beginning, and then by the middle, you know, there's some conflict has happened, right? It's like it's like the arc of all storytelling. You know, there's got to be like the exposition where you introduce, you know, who the players are, who the characters are, and then there's got to be some problem they run into or obstacle, and then hopefully there's some kind of resolution. So it's kind of like happy, sad, happy, or, you know, what have you.
And so does your classical background also play a part in like your role as like a producer, like when you're in the studio?
I'm sure that it influences the way I write music as well. Maybe it's at this point it's so subconscious that, you know, I don't think about it or realize it. But yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that there are certain kinds of like melodies and chord progressions that I gravitate towards, that kind of, I guess, make my music sound like me. And it's probably informed, by my studies of classical music. So
when you were like a child, how did you imagine your role in music?
Wow. So as a child, I studied piano, although I never really aspired necessarily to become like a professional pianist. That route always just seemed like way too intense for me, as much as I did love playing the piano. But actually something that I loved just as much, if not more, was singing when I was little. And specifically, I used to love musical theater.
Nice.
So yeah, I know. I was basically like a big dork. That's really what it was, you know, like classical music student and musical theater kid, like not the cool kid in school. But so back then, how I envisioned myself was actually like I wanted to be like a Broadway star. That's really how I initially saw myself being a part of, I guess, the broader like music world. And it wasn't until like relatively recently that I discovered the world of DJing and underground dance music. So yeah, this it's definitely taken a different turn than what I imagined when I was little, but this is way more fun, I think, you know.
Would you say that like you could still be theatrical when you're on stage as a DJ?
Absolutely. You know, I don't know that I would describe my style when I'm up there as like super theatrical. You know, I see videos of some other DJs and performers where I'm like, wow, like the energy that they're bringing to that stage right now is like, I'm like, how do they do that? Like, I don't even understand how they have the energy to, you know, pump their fists that hard and be as theatrical as they're being. So I don't necessarily bring that kind of energy with me when I'm DJing. Right. You know what I'm talking about, right? But I do think that there is a sense, like a subtle sense of like drama and maybe a little bit of theatrics there. You know, when I look at videos of myself playing, I'm like, oh wow, I didn't realize I like move my hands in that way. It's a little dramatic, you know. It's just like subconscious.
Would you say that like it's more present in like the movements that you describe in your set?
Oh yes. I feel like maybe the theatrics are conveyed. They sort of speak for themselves in the track selection and how I kind of piece together this set. It's like you can kind of feel the theatricalness, I guess, or the sort of a bit of like that orchestral nature versus it coming through from like my physicality, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I read in an interview with Electric Groove that it wasn't until you moved to LA in 2016 that you were exposed to like underground dance music.
Yeah.
So which types of underground scenes did you begin to like immerse yourself in at first?
So yeah, like, you know, like you mentioned from the article, I moved to LA in 2016, and I'm trying to think. You know, right away, basically, I was introduced to Sound Nightclub, which is like LA's premier underground club for, you know, if you're looking for a night out to listen to the best house and techno, you go to Sound Nightclub. And I don't know if that counts as a scene per se, but you know, I would say that like sound definitely has its own like culture and its own like loyal following and like people who go there every weekend or, you know, go there frequently. And so I feel like that was my first like family, I guess, or like quote unquote scene that I, you know, got involved with and sort of discovered this music through.
Yeah, and like here in the tunnel, we really value like the concept of community and what it means to like web together different niches. How have you seen music unite groups and communities in the past through like your DJing?
Wow, I'm like, it feels like such a big question.
It's pretty big. It's okay.
I mean, you know, I think that if you just kind of look around you at these like festivals where, you know, let's say dance music is the prevalent genre, and not just in dance music festivals, but you know, I guess I feel the most like those are the types of festivals I've been the most to, so I feel like I can speak to those. But if you just look kind of at the demographic around you, it kind of speaks for itself in terms of like who's shown up and who's there. You can just see that there's people from all walks of life, and it's just amazing, you know, like you know that there are lawyers amongst you and like doctors and you see, you know, Asian people and you see Hispanic people and you see people of just all races and all walks of life there, wearing their like best rave outfits, just, you know, leaving everything like at home and to come to the dance floor and just like lose themselves in the music and hang out with each other. And so yeah, I mean, I think all you have to do is go to one of these events to see how this music really brings different people together. You know, it's just all around you.
Yeah. With like that being said, you do a lot of like weaving together of specific genres, even in the music you produce, I've noticed. So
Sure.
what are your favorite genres that you like to blend?
So I would say that it's hard to pick like a favorite, I guess, between whether I lean more techno or house, but I'm just thinking to like some of my productions. I feel like most of the grooves I start with lean a little more techno. There's just something so kind of hypnotic, and honestly, subconsciously, maybe it's that like the basic techno groove reminds me of a metronome ticking. And I know metronome is not something that, I would like turn on to like listen to just in my spare time, but like it's hypnotic, yeah, and it takes me back to like all the years I spent studying piano, right? Like all those years that I had the metronome ticking to like learn how to, stay on time. And so I think there's a familiarity there. And so, techno is something, is definitely a genre that like I feel like forms the basis of when I write music. And then from there, I love to layer on and reference from different genres, like you mentioned, that maybe people don't always associate with techno, such as pop, Yeah, I especially with like the vocal writing, I like to try and find ways to like insert a bit of that catchiness or just that pop sound. It's hard to describe. I like to try and like include some of that in everything that I do, and blend it in a way that doesn't feel forced or too pop, I guess, but that kind of just like complements the minimalness and kind of like the undergroundness of techno, if that makes sense.
It does. I noticed that in your song Sparks, the extended mix, because like you'd be listening to it, it'd be like, okay, this is sort of like a techno business casual, like refined sort of piece, and then like I consider stuff business casual. It's like you're listening to it in a corporate building, but like, and then it starts to like embellish into like this like portal, like stuff gets like delayed and like you have like these synths added, and then it like at the end of that transition, it sort of becomes this R&B pop piece with more elements added. And so like, I felt like that was my favorite example within your work, that you've used genre bending. So actually, well, first, I'm so glad you like the song so much. So Sparks was actually a collaboration between myself and a producer named Chris Simon. And so Chris actually did the production on that track, and I wrote and performed the vocals. So, I think he could probably, if he were on, he could speak better to the actual production. But no, I love the way you described it. Yeah, like with that track, he had sent me basically a giant folder of demos that he had, that I would, we had talked about collaborating, and I was like, send me over some stuff that, doesn't have any top line written to it yet, and let's see if maybe, we could come up with something together. And out of that huge folder, literally, I think he sent me 50 tracks. Like, I didn't even understand how someone had made that many. I was so impressed. And I think I listened to every single one, and the instrumental for Sparks was it just stood out like right away, and it was like at the bottom of the folder too. It wasn't like it was at the top, like it was like I had to get all the way through like 48 other tracks before I got to that one, and I was like, wait, this is it. And just, I think right away it's like my ear picked up on maybe some of the same things that that your ear has that makes you like it, but it just felt like this perfect blend of underground but like kind of fresh pop elements. And I don't think that he meant to like, if I asked Chris, I don't think that he would say like, oh yeah, I was referencing like pop music per se, but it just had some of that energy in it to me. And so it
it just instantly, no pun intended, sparked like the melody and the writing for it very quickly. Like the track itself just like it was such a vibe that like it was so easy to write to right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sort of like going into your newest chapter in your artistry, I love the concept of time. Your song, of course, but like just in general, like we all have the same 24 hours in the day.
Totally.
So the broader topic is, how do we as artists conceptualize time? Like, how are you able to make the most of your time as an artist?
I'm like, okay, huge sigh, because I feel like that is like the eternal struggle for me. I'm sure for many people, and not just artists, but like especially lately, I feel that's such a heavy question. You know, I constantly lately feel like there's never enough time in a day, and I also constantly worry that I'm not making the most of my time. And I think it's just when you want to accomplish so much, that you know, and every day you're grinding, just like somehow the time just seems to like get away from you like faster and faster. But you know, I think, I guess two parts to answer that question. The first part will be like, I guess, more practical. You know, just something that really helps me is to like every day make a list of the things I need to do like for that day. Like I know like that sounds so simple, but and there are some days where like, you know, I have a late start to the day or something, and I don't get around to like quite making that list, and I can immediately feel the difference in like the productivity and also in the sense of purpose like in that day, you know, versus the days where I do sit down and I make my list of things that I'm going to do for that day. And then especially how I feel after like 7 of those days in a row, it's like suddenly I feel like, wow, like I look back on the week and I'm like, this was a really purposeful week, you know? So I guess like on a practical level, if you're able to like start, you know, on the daily and see that compound, I think that helps in feeling like, because yeah, if you string together 7 days and then you string together, you know, 4 weeks, you get a month, and then, you know, it grows. And so like that's one way that you can feel like your time is being spent purposefully, you know, and that you're accomplishing everything that you want to do. And then I think, you know, maybe on a less practical answer to that is, I think for artists, as long as we are constantly sort of creating and telling our stories, I think that's kind of it, right? Like, I told a friend once who asked me, like, what do you think really like makes an artist? Like, what are artists? You know, it was just one of those like rabbit holes that we were going down, one of those like debates or philosophical talks we were having. And I was like, you know, if I had to boil it down to one sentence, if I could try, I was like, I think artists are just people who have specific things to say. And what you have to say might change over time, but there tends to be with each artist like something that they really care about, you know? And that's usually like the through line in what drives their art and what drives like their creative output. So I think that as long as we spend our time kind of, you know, in the name of chasing that and creating around that, whatever that thing is that we want to say, I think that's all we really need as artists to feel like we are like making the most of our time.
I think that's really important to be said, you know, because like especially with people that place super high expectations on themselves, there's always that internal struggle, like, did I make the most of my day today? Like, what can I do to sort of just like optimize my time here? But like just knowing that what you're doing is enough, if you are still like actively pursuing it, it is okay, and that it goes at your own pace.
Totally. It's sometimes yeah, I mean, it's hard to train our brains to like think this way, but sometimes it's just enough to like be doing the thing, you know, versus to have to be doing the thing and have XYZ results come from it, right? Like obviously, you know, we all have goals and we want the results to reflect that. But sometimes, yeah, just the doing of it, you know, it's like just sitting in the studio and like making a song that day, even if it doesn't go anywhere, even if it's, you know, like nothing really happens with it. Sometimes it's enough just to be like, I got to sit down today and work on music. Like that's a privilege, you know?
That is.
Yeah.
Now, what do you feel like wastes your time the most?
Oh my gosh, like don't get me started. I am so good at wasting time, like literally. I really feel like this is a big part of why I wrote a song called Time. I think it's like, I didn't think about it that way in the moment, but it just was like, I want to write a song about it. It just came out of me, but like now this is like the therapy session. I feel like maybe I was like yeah, grappling with some things deep down in my subconscious and my anxieties with the way that I manage my own time. But I don't know. I feel like everything can waste my time. Like literally it'll be like, you know, obviously social media is a huge time suck. And it's such a double-edged sword, I feel, for artists these days and creatives. I mean, really anyone, but like, especially for anyone where your job is kind of, you know, forward facing, like we have to create content, you know, that's part of the machine. And then, so like on one hand, you know, you do it and you're like on social media, you're like, no, I'm working, you know, like this is part of my work. But then next thing you know, you're like, you know, doing the endless scroll thing. And you're like, oh my gosh, like an hour just flew by and I've just been scrolling on Instagram again. So social media is definitely, you know, something that easily sucks my time up. And I'm trying to think what else. Luckily, I'm not a huge TV person. I mean, I love movies and TV shows, but what I mean by not a huge TV person is I just like don't allow myself to even go down that rabbit hole very often, because once I start I can't stop. So like I don't spend a lot of time during the week doing that. If I did that too, I feel like then that'd be game over. Like I wouldn't have any time left to do anything productive.
Yeah. What's your favorite movie though? I'm just curious.
Oh my gosh, favorite movie. Wow. I feel like I literally can't even think of like a favorite movie like off the top of my head right now. But like I feel like right now I'm more on like the like favorite shows vibe, you know. Like there's just been so much incredible stuff that's come out on television. I feel even more so than like the movies the last few years. Like I'll say I love anything that's like dark and a little scary. Like I loved Kingdom. Have you seen that? The Korean zombie show.
I'm gonna write that down. Is that on like HBO or?
It's on Netflix. Oh my gosh. I mean, when I tell you this is one of the best top 3 TV shows I've ever seen in my life. Like number 1 potentially being Breaking Bad. It's I say potentially because it's like I'm like, is it do I like Kingdom more than I liked I don't know. Breaking Bad, I mean, it was just so iconic. It's hard. But like Kingdom is up there for me. It's like number 2 or 3, like for sure.
I'll have to definitely check it out.
Yeah.
We're coming close to our time, so I would like to just ask one more question.
Sure.
I guess something that I wanted to touch upon, which I think is really important. You're one of the first, like, I think you're the second or third woman that I've interviewed on this podcast. So with that being said, as being a woman in the industry, what advice can you give to the girls out there who want to pursue their dreams in music?
Oh, I always get like a little emotional when I think about that, you know? Man. So much advice. I just had such a intense flashback to my like younger self starting out, and just remembered so many things, you know. I'd say first and foremost that this is a better time than ever to be a woman like in this industry. So like don't be scared, you know. It's like I can tell you that I don't want to say it's never been easier, because like there's always going to be challenges for us women, I feel. But like, just like, don't be intimidated. Like I said, I promise this is like as good of a time as it's ever been to be doing this. And so do not be intimidated by what you see around you. And I would say this advice for not only women, but all artists, you know, like stick to your vision. But like really for women, stick to your vision because I feel like we have confidence issues sometimes, you know, like we tend to second guess ourselves a lot, maybe because like, you know, we don't see tons of examples of ourselves out there doing the thing. And so it's hard to be like, hell yeah, like I know this is going to succeed because, you know, I can point to like, you know, 8,000 people who have done this and succeeded. It's like, I can point to like, definitely not like that many, right? So like, you know, it's hard to feel confident in your vision when you don't see tons of other examples of it out there yet, you know, but we're changing that. And so just stick to your vision. Like your vision is yours, it's unique, it's what makes you you. And do not let other people, you know, don't let anyone tell you like that isn't going to work, or that that's silly, or that's too feminine, or that's too soft, or like you have to, you know, be any specific way. Like be you, like be however you want. There's room for it all. Yeah, I don't know if that's cliche, but it's just having been through this now for the number of years that I have, and just, you know, having lived life as long as I have, it's just so true. There's a reason I feel like, you know, you hear it over and over again, to stick to your vision and don't let anyone deter you or try and change you. And yeah, that authenticity and that passion like will come through.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. That's really important for people to hear.
Absolutely.
Where can we find you on streaming services, social media, and all that?
Yeah, so you can find me pretty much everywhere, I guess. You know, my music is on Spotify, it's on Apple Music. I know it's also up on YouTube, for those of you who like to listen to your music on YouTube. I know there are people out there who are into that.
I'm a SoundCloud listener.
Okay,
SoundCloud.
yeah. Only SoundCloud. Wow, SoundCloud loyalist. My music is also on SoundCloud, so especially like for mixes and stuff, that's a good place. Like I'll say, yeah, like most of my mixes are up on SoundCloud and not necessarily anywhere else. So yeah, check all those out. And on socials, again, all the usual places. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and I have a YouTube channel as well. And my Instagram handle is @SOHMI_.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for crawling down to the deep dark tunnel.
I had a blast in here. It was nice and inviting, actually.
It wasn't dark and scary this time.
No, it was great.
Well, thank you. Now playing Time by SOHMI. And that was Time by SOHMI. You can find SOHMI on all streaming platforms. Are you an artist interested in being featured on Deep Dark Tunnel Diaries? Follow us on Instagram at Deep Dark Tunnel Radio for more information.
Below the city rises